Hi everybody, this is Judy at Judy in the Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how I make fermented cauliflower the easy way. Alright, you're going to see I have a lot of things assembled here, and yes, it is true, I do. Now I'm going to start with, I've got my cauliflower here that's been washed and broken up into relatively small pieces, and it can go a little bit smaller than when I've got it, but anyway, we're going to do with what we've got. Now the reason I call this easy is because I do use a starter culture. You just want to think of this as like being a probiotic for fermented vegetables. I'm not promoting any particular brands. I am promoting a product that I use that I find helps me to have a very successful turnout. A lot of people will say that you can ferment vegetables without a starter. This is true, yes. I have done it both ways, but I have found that this is a no-fail way to me. This stuff is not cheap, but all probiotics are on the expensive side, and this goes a very long way with the way I use it. Okay, this box comes with 6 sachets in there, and I store it in the refrigerator, and I use a very painstakingly small amount. In the sachet here, I'm going to just take out a level 1/4 teaspoon of it, and that's all I'm going to use at the moment. I'm going to kind of seal this back up so I don't spill it in any way, put it back in the box and just set that aside. And now I'm going to take some distilled water. You don't have to use distilled, you can use filtered tap water, but the key is you want no chlorine and as little fluoride as possible. And of course I have a filter and it will remove chlorine, but it will not remove fluoride. Let me get something here. It will not remove fluoride. And my tap water does have some fluoride in there, so I like to use distilled water, and I may use a blend of the distilled plus my filtered tap. But for today, we'll just stick with the distilled. Now, I've got 2 cups of water here that I've added that 1/4 teaspoon of the starter culture in there. And I'm just going to let this sit for a little bit to give that culture an opportunity to just kind of get activated. In the meantime, I have a half-gallon mason jar here that I am going to just add my prepared cauliflower pieces to. Again, these have been cut up into relatively small pieces, bite-sized pieces, and they've been washed carefully and drained. And so now I'm just going to add them to the jar. And again, I'm giving that starter culture a little bit of time just to activate. And then I'm going to add some salt to that water. Now you're going to see a lot of different recommendations on the different amounts of salt. It's really to taste, but there's more to it than that. The salt has a purpose. The salt definitely has a purpose, and that's to prevent the growth of harmful bacteria, while the helpful bacteria, the fermenting bacteria, has an opportunity to get started in there. Okay? So now I see that in my jar I do have some room. I like to fill it up a little bit more than that. So what I'm going to do is turn the camera off, and I'm going to get some carrots and get them ready to go on top of this. And that's really my filler, is to throw some carrots on. If I'm fermenting cabbage, as in sauerkraut, I usually don't mix it with the cauliflower. No specific reason why not to. I just prefer it separately. So let me get some carrots to help fill the rest of the jar here. Alright, as you can see, I have added some carrots to this jar and kind of lightly patted them down. You want your vegetables up to roughly about where the shoulder of the jar is, where it starts to come in, okay? Now I think our water with our culture has been there long enough. Now I want to add some salt to it. Online, you're going to see a lot of different recommendations regarding the amount of salt to use. It's kind of a matter of personal preference, but there is a purpose in the salt too. Again, like I said, is to retard the growth of harmful bacteria while the good bacteria is multiplying. I prefer 1 teaspoon of salt to 1 cup of water. That seems to work well for me, and it does not make it overly salty. So now I'm going to add, that's 2 cups of water, so I added 2 teaspoons of salt. You want to stir this up so that it's completely dissolved. And I'm going to keep adding this salt water. I do not need to add any more culture. What that 1/4 teaspoon is going to be enough for this jar. But I'm going to keep adding the salt water in the ratio of 1 cup water to 1 teaspoon of salt until this jar has water in it that's well above the level of the vegetables. But I'm going to do something right close to that time too, and I'll show you what it is. But in the meantime, we have some water to add to this jar. In the case of fermenting vegetables, oxygen is not your friend. Okay, so you want to keep these vegetables completely. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more salt because my water level is just above the 2 cups. Oxygen is not your friend when you are fermenting vegetables, not at all. You want to keep them completely submerged during the fermentation process. Otherwise, they will invite the growth of the harmful bacteria, and if you see any funky looking stuff going on in there, you may need to just toss it out. And I have tried making cultured vegetables without the starter and threw a number of batches out. Now, I'm not finished adding water yet, but my water line is just to the top of those vegetables. Now I have some cauliflower greens here that I have saved, and what I'm going to do is use them as ways to hold these vegetables down and into place. You kind of have to trim them down a little bit perhaps to make them fit comfortably, and use whatever pieces you need to create a little barrier there. It's all you're doing is creating a barrier, something to hold them down. I'm kind of locking these pieces in any way that I can by using the neck of the jar as my holder downer there on them. Okay, you like that terminology, holder downer? Okay. And these pieces will actually ferment right along with the vegetables that are in there, and I'll actually eat them as well. They've been washed really well, of course. Okay, let me take one more little piece and put this in here. I think we have enough wedged in there that it's going to hold our cauliflower and hold those carrots down under the water. That is key. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish adding water. It's not to the very top, but it's down about 3/8 of an inch. That might be a little bit high, but I find that it will tend to lose some water along the way. And now I have a plastic cap that I'm going to put on this jar. If you do not, you can use a regular metal rimmed canning jar lid, regular one. However, because of the salt, it will tend to rust. So that's why I prefer the plastic. Now, I'm not putting anything inside the rim like I showed in another video on how to stop it to leak. I actually prefer to have a little bit of air leakage that can come out, and I'm not going to close this really tight. I'm going to leave it just barely tightened up. And what you want to do is put this in a place where it will be left alone and cool, not in a warm environment, but a cool environment. So maybe away from the stove for sure. Put it in a bowl and maybe put even a cloth underneath of it, because as this starts to ferment, the bacteria that's in there will start eating the contents and working with it and creating some gas. And so that gas is going to work its way up and push itself out. This is where periodically it's good to kind of loosen the lid a little bit and allow that gas to escape, and then tighten it a little bit. Along the way, it will also help push some of this liquid out. That's why you need it in a bowl, and preferably with a cloth too, to help catch some of that liquid, because if you don't, you may be sorry about that. I allow this to work for 10 days, and that is the right amount of fermentation for my liking. You can allow it to ferment as long as you want. It can be a matter of a few days to a month or more. It's really a matter of your personal preferences. And so 10 days I found is perfect for me, and then I will take it just like it is and put it in the refrigerator. It will still continue to ferment in the refrigerator, but at a very, very slow rate, okay? So I don't worry about it fermenting beyond that. And then when I go to eat it, I remove the greens that are on the top, and I'll even throw them in my salad and then go ahead and eat. And you don't need to worry about putting the greens back on there once it's in the refrigerator. But that is about it in a nutshell. Again, it's up to you as far as how long you leave it to ferment. 10 days is right for me. 3 days might be good for you, but it will hardly be fermented at that time. To know that it's working, if you take your jar and just slightly tilt it, and you see air bubbles rising to the top, when you tilt it like that, you'll know that everything is working fine. If you take the lid off and take a look at it and you see something black in there, that is not a good sign. It is not good, and you may need to just toss it out, okay? So I can honestly say that I've tried different ways of doing this, and as long as I use the starter culture, and again, I'm not promoting any particular brands, there's more than one out there, but as long as I use a starter culture for fermented foods, I have had success 100% of the time. I have not had to throw anything away as long as I use the starter culture. I know the next question is going to be, can you use a regular probiotic capsule? I have not done that. I have done research as to what kind of bacteria is in this culture, and it does differ some from any probiotic that I have ever found. There are some strains in here that I have never seen in a standard probiotic capsule that you normally take for your gut health. So it might work if you use standard probiotic capsules that you buy in whatever pharmacy you use, but I cannot guarantee the outcome. There's a lot to be said about how to ferment vegetables. If you have questions or comments, let me know below, okay? I'll be glad to address them if I possibly can. This is Judy at Judi in the Kitchen. I hope this helps. Bye for now.